Possessing our number 10 spot, we have a supermarket possession. Before I saw this video, the scariest thing that I thought can happen at a supermarket was inflation of prices, but then I came across this video. This clip is of a woman who is browsing a supermarket over in China. But suddenly she looks around and then her body becomes completely taken over by like a demonic spirit. Her head is thrown uncontrollably back and her body starts convulsing. People in the store approached her and try to help her out, but they become so scared, so all they can do is just watch from a distance and call the police. But maybe they should be calling the rain warden or maybe a priest to come perform some exorcism. I'm not sure what a police officer would do at this point. If I saw this woman possessed, like if I walk into a supermarket and I saw that, I would just turn around like it never happened and I would not shop there anymore. Indian exorcism comes onto this list at number 9. In one of the most prestigious Hindu temples in India, well, there is a locked room that holds some of the most tormented people in India. It's called the Cave of Spirits, and it is known as the last hope for people who are possessed by a demon. Several girls in a nearby village have become possessed by an unknown spirit. The families tried everything to get rid of the demon, but nothing worked. So they attempted to perform an exorcism in the temple.
One by one, the girls break down.
When the spirit comes forth, the girl loses all control over her body.
The exorcism appeared to be successful.
Mooney will leave, but the spirit that tormented her will remain here forever.
Sleep possession takes us to number 8. A young guy who has had trouble sleeping decided to record himself with a CCTV camera that detects movement and audio. For me, I never want to do this. I never ever feel the urge to record myself sleeping, just in case I actually do see something. Like, I don't want to freak myself out where I can never sleep again. Well, this guy, he wanted to see if there's anything unusual that was causing him to wake up in the middle of the night. But once he reviewed the footage, he wasn't relieved at all. Well, let's take a look at what happened. Let's take a look at what he saw. Yeah, this is exactly why I don't ever want to record myself sleeping. I don't want to know what weird things are lurking in my room or if I'm being possessed by a sleep demon. Sometimes I have a hard time sleeping, and by sometimes I mean all the time, or I wake up tired, but I'm definitely not going to investigate why. I don't want to know that I've been possessed by like Freddy Krueger or something. Number 7, we have the exorcism of Annalisa Michael. When she was 16 years old, Annalise suffered from a major seizure and was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. She was prescribed a medication, but that didn't stop her seizures. Annalise said that she kept seeing devil faces throughout the day, and she was even complaining of depression and hearing voices. The voices told her that she would rot in hell and that she was cursed. So her family began to believe that she was possessed by a demon, and they called a priest to perform an exorcism. That's when things got out of hand. Here is some audio taken from the exorcism. Unfortunately for Annalise, she was found dead in her home, and an autopsy stated that the cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration. So during the exorcism, her priest and her family failed to keep her alive, and at the end of it, she only weighed 68 pounds. And it's not even clear if she was actually possessed or not. She could have just had an untreated schizophrenia. Subway possession drives us to number 6. Oh my god. Is this real life right now? I mean, good luck sleeping tonight. I don't even know what just happened. Apparently this footage was filmed in a subway station in San Francisco. Someone get that woman a Snickers. But all jokes aside, I really hope that people filming this called the police or told the authorities at the subway station, because she looks like she could seriously hurt herself. I think that she isn't possessed by a violent demon, then she must have snorted some like flakka, because I don't know what else this could be. I'm pretty scared from this, so let's move on. And what the heck is flakka? Who's naming these things? Pope Francis' exorcism blesses us at number 5. This footage was filmed at St. Peter's Square in Italy, and it's of Pope Francis apparently performing an exorcism. The priest that is behind the young man whispered something to the Pope, which caused him to recite an intense prayer. During the prayer, the man's mouth opens wide and he is exhaling sharply. The Vatican downplayed the incident, and they are claiming that Pope Francis just recited a prayer, but lots of people think that he performed a quick exorcism. What do you guys think? And at number 4, we have a possessed woman on a train. What is with all these possessed people riding public transportation? This is exactly why I got my license and drive a car. I'm officially freaked out. This possessed woman was filmed on a train that was in Alberta, Canada. After she looked at her cell phone, she started to act really weird, and she suddenly attacked another passenger who was sitting beside her.
Whoa. Whoa, chill.
She grabbed the man's throat and punched him with her other arm. So yeah, she was either possessed by a demon, or this is the direct result of using some drugs. Or this is the direct result of using drugs. I'll let you guys be the judge. Convenience store possession checks us into number 3. This footage is brought to us by a security camera in a convenience store. As you can see, the video was of a normal guy who just wanted to buy a drink, but then all of a sudden he began to violently shake and make strange noises. Someone needs to call a priest, because if it's not a demon, then I'm gonna guess he's going through some like Red Bull withdrawals. If we fast forward the clip to the end, the man passes out on the floor and a dark shadow appears to move in the reflection of the refrigerator door. Watch. A bloody demonic possession takes us to number 2.
Você não é poderoso. Jesus, Deus está aqui. Deus é maior do que tudo.
I literally have no idea how I'm going to sleep tonight. This video is pretty messed up. The person using their phone to film him, instead of calling 911, should probably be arrested. He is clearly injured and no one is helping him. Apparently the guy has a gun wound to the face, but I think tomorrow he is going to have an extreme backache. But no, seriously, how the hell is he moving around with his back like that? This poor guy is in serious need of an exorcism, a doctor, a chiropractor. Get him something. Pope Francis, where you at? Finally, number 1 spot, we have a really scary possession. I'm about to show you a tape that was recorded back in 1973. This footage was found in the attic of a home by the new owners, and what was found was very disturbing. Okay, what the hell was up with that creepy ass laugh? That will literally haunt me for the rest of my life. I don't think I'll ever be able to sleep again. I think we should all start a support group, because there's no way I'll ever be able to get over this. So the support group will be for me and for you guys watching this as well. And as always, if you guys want to watch the entire clip, I'll make sure to link it in the description below, but don't say I didn't warn you.
And we're starting things off with the case of Arne Cheyenne Johnson. 1981, a chilling case involved Arne Johnson became infamous due to its connection with famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Johnson was accused of stabbing his landlord to death during a heated argument, but what made this case so odd was the defense's claim that Johnson had committed the act while under the influence of demonic possession. The Warrens had entered the picture before the stabbing took place, when Johnson's fiance's younger brother exhibited signs of what they believed at the time to be demonic possession. And called in to investigate, the Warrens determined that an exorcism was necessary to save the young boy, and during this exorcism, David, the young boy, allegedly levitated into the air and predicted the death of Alan Bono, the landlord, at Arne Johnson's hands. Arne then taunted the demon and seemingly invited it to possess him instead, and then several months later, he ended up taking Bono's life, just like the prophecy prophesied. When the case went to trial, Johnson's defense team tried to introduce this supernatural supernatural element of demonic possession into the mix, with the Warrens testifying in court to support the claim, but the judge ultimately ruled such defense inadmissible, and Johnson was convicted of his crime. Next up, we have the story that inspired the movie The Haunting in Connecticut. In 1986, Carmen and Al Snedeker rented a house in Southington, Connecticut. Little did they know that their new residence held a sinister secret. It had once been a funeral parlor. The Snedekers found mortuary tools in the basement. Turns out the house wasn't just a home, but a former abode for the deceased, many of whom, it appeared, had never truly left. The family reported this lingering scent of rotting flesh which permeated in the air. The water would occasionally run red, like blood. The haunting escalated further as the Snedekers' eldest son started experiencing terrifying visions and claimed to see these malevolent spirits. Carmen and Al even reported being scandalously touched by these apparitions, leaving them quite traumatized and terrified, and they finally sought help from Ed and Lorraine. The Warrens, after a thorough examination of the house, did confirm the haunting to be the tormented souls of the deceased who had passed through the funeral home, and they suspected that the morticians who'd once operated there had engaged in sinister and unethical practices with the bodies, angering the spirits and keeping them from moving on. At number 8, we have the Perrin family case. In 1970, Roger and Carolyn Perrin moved to a seemingly idyllic 200-acre farmhouse in Rhode Island with their 5 young daughters. Turns out, though, that their new home had a very dark past. Over the years, a series of former residents had met horrifying ends within the home. Some died in mysterious circumstances, and others took their own lives. The Perrins came to believe that the spirits of these souls were roaming around their house. The paranormal activity the family experienced ran the gamut from benevolent to malevolent. Some spirits appeared harmless, even playing with the Perrin children and occasionally lending a hand with household chores, but other, more sinister entities began tormenting the family. And in 1974, the family turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren for help. Apparently, though, after they showed up, stuff just got worse, reaching a point where Roger Perrin felt like he needed to just ask the Warrens to leave. Next on the list, we have the Enfield poltergeist. In 1977, Peggy Hodgson, a single mother of 4, made a terrifying call to the police from her Enfield home in North London. She reported unsettling phenomena that had been going on in her house. Peggy claimed to have witnessed furniture mysteriously moving, and 2 of her children, Janet and Margaret, claimed to have heard strange knocking sounds coming from inside the walls. Little did they know that their lives were about to be changed by one of the most famous poltergeist cases in history. Over the course of the next 18 months, more than 30 individuals, including neighbors, psychic researchers, journalists, they came to the Hodgson home to investigate these bizarre occurrences. And witness reported heavy furniture moving on its own, objects being hurled across rooms without any apparent cause. The paranormal activity reached an even more alarming level when Janet and Margaret Hodgson were photographed levitating several feet above their beds. Ed and Lorraine Warren were contacted in 1978, and they concluded that a malevolent and demonic presence had taken residence in the Enfield house. Number 6, the exorcism of the Southend werewolf. This next case unfolded in Essex, England. A seemingly ordinary carpenter named William Ramsey claimed to be plagued by a demonic possession that drove him to transform into a werewolf-like creature. Ramsey's ordeal began at the tender age of 9 when he apparently experienced his first transformation. While playing outdoors, he suddenly felt an unnaturally cold breeze and smelt a horrible odor, which triggered a violent frenzy. And during this episode, he exhibited incredible strength, uprooting a fence post still attached to the fence and gnawing at the wire mesh. Ramsey's next transformation wouldn't occur till much later when he was an adult, though, and in these supposed transformations, he'd experience sudden violent fits of rage where he would display what witnesses described as almost inhuman strength. He would bare his teeth, he would growl menacingly, and he could contort his hands into claw-like shapes. In 1989, the Warrens got wind of Bill Ramsey. They convinced him to travel from England to their church in Connecticut, where a specialist in exorcism, Bishop Robert McKenna, would attempt to rid him of the demonic presence. And according to everyone involved, the exorcism was a success, and Bill went on to live a werewolf-free life. At our number 5 spot, we have the dollhouse. This is a lesser known case associated with Ed and Lorraine. It involves a haunted dollhouse that was believed to be inhabited by malevolent spirits. Now, this dollhouse wasn't your typical child's toy. It was a miniature replica of a house, and some of the stuff going on within this dollhouse included mysterious movements of the miniature furniture and figures inside, rearranging themselves in eerie, unexplainable ways. Ed and Lorraine conducted their paranormal investigation of the dollhouse, which included methods like interviews with witnesses, psychic readings, and attempts to communicate with whatever spirits were attached to the dollhouse. It's unclear whether the Warrens were able to permanently rid the dollhouse of this malevolent spirit, or if the case is just unresolved. Next on the list is the Union Cemetery case. This Connecticut cemetery became a major location for their work because of the persistent reports of ghostly apparitions and strange phenomena going on there. The site had a reputation for being one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States. One of the most famous occurrences at Union Cemetery is the White Lady legend. Witnesses claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman in a white dress wandering amongst the tombstones, often vanishing into thin air. This apparition was said to be the spirit of a grieving mother searching for her deceased child, and the Warrens conducted a number of investigations at Union Cemetery to document and understand the reported supernatural activity. They employed a lot of tools and techniques to capture evidence of the paranormal: photography, audio recordings, and of course eyewitness testimonies. And over the years they accumulated a pile of data and accounts from those who had experienced encounters with these spirits at the cemetery. Next up is the Smurl haunting. In 1974, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a seemingly ordinary house on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, expecting nothing more than a peaceful home for their family. But their lives took a terrifying turn when they began to experience a series of unexplainable, unsettling events that convinced them that their home was being haunted by a malevolent spirit. The Smurls reported a long list of creepy stuff, all pointing to the presence of a demon within their house. They claimed that the entity had brutally slammed their German Shepherd into a wall, oh no, bit Jack's ear, and even pushed one of their daughters down a flight of stairs. In 1986, the Smurls reached out to Ed and Lorraine Warren for help. They confirmed the sinister presence within the Smurl home. Ed Warren even claimed to have witnessed a dark mass forming inside the house. He also claimed to have seen a message written in a mirror telling him to get out, which he believed to have been left by the entity. Coming in at number 2, we have probably the most famous Ed and Lorraine Warren case, the Amityville case in Long Island, New York, 1975. The story began with the Lutz family, who moved into what appeared to be this picturesque suburban home. What they didn't know was that just a year prior, the house had been the site of a gruesome mass murder committed by Ronald Defoe Jr., who had taken the lives of 6 members of his family. In the first 28 days of their stay there, the Lutz family experienced just an onslaught of terror. They reported swarms of flies appearing out of nowhere, unexplained banging noises echoing throughout their house, ooze dripping down their walls, and even seeing full-on apparitions. The most outlandish thing they would report, though, is that some members of the family would allegedly levitate off their beds. When the Lutz family turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren for help, they agreed to conduct a cleansing of the house, and during their visit they captured photographs of the house, one of which seems to show a small boy standing in the shadows with glowing eyes, which is one of the most famous ghost photos in history. And it's pretty creepy if that boy indeed was not in the home at the time, which everyone claims wasn't. Lorraine Warren herself has expressed that out of all the cases she's been involved in, the Amityville house haunts her the most, or haunted her the most. But that's going to bring us to number 1 with the Annabelle case. The Annabelle case revolves around a seemingly innocuous object, an ordinary Raggedy Ann doll. Donna, a young nurse, received this doll as a gift from her mother, and initially it appeared to be just a harmless toy, but it didn't take long before strange events started to unfold in Donna's apartment, where she lived with her roommate Angie. The doll had a tendency to move on its own, even moving from one room to another. Notes with chilling messages, "help me," written in a child's handwriting, starting appearing throughout the apartment. Lou, Angie's boyfriend, claimed to have experienced a a nightmarish encounter. He woke up one night paralyzed with fear and then just saw the doll slowly crawling up his body, seemingly attempting to strangle him. Donna and Angie sought the guidance of a medium who identified the entity attached to the doll as the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins. The medium insisted that the spirit meant no harm, but Ed and Lorraine Warren had a different interpretation. They believed a malevolent demonic presence was behind the unsettling phenomena surrounding the doll. The Warrens performed a blessing in Donna's residence before deciding to take possession of Annabelle, removing it from the young woman's lives. It sat for years in Ed and Lorraine's occult museum of the paranormal before it finally closed.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Ariana Grande. This is a terrifying paranormal encounter had by the super sweet Ariana Grande. Back in the Yours Truly era for the star, while in Kansas City, she and some friends took a visit to Stull Cemetery, which legend claims is one of the gates to hell on Earth. This turned out to be a more haunting visit than the group had bargained for, however, as the singer recounted that suddenly they, quote, felt this sick, overwhelming feeling of negativity over the whole car, and we smelled sulfur, which is the sign of a demon, and there was a fly in the car randomly, which is another sign of a demon. I rolled down the window before we left and said, "We apologize, we didn't mean to disrupt your peace." Things only got more spooky for Ari though when she later tried to send her manager a picture of the cemetery. This photo she attempted to send came back with an error saying that the file couldn't be sent due to the fact that it was 666 megabytes. In our number 9 spot today we have Miley Cyrus. In an interview with Elle UK, Miley Cyrus opened up about a haunted apartment that she and her family stayed in during her 2009 European tour. She said, quote, "It was seriously so terrifying. It used to be an old bakery and they turned it into an apartment building, and I was having really crazy dreams and really scary things, and one night my little sister, it sounds crazy to tell you, but she was standing in the shower and all of a sudden I hear her scream. I run in there and the water had somehow flipped to hot, but it wasn't like the water had just changed, the knob had turned, but she hadn't turned it and it was burning her. She was really red." She continued on with the chilling tale by saying, quote, "Before I felt this, I thought I had seen a little boy sitting on the sink watching me take a shower, so I felt really freaked out. I was sitting there the next night and maybe I'm crazy, but I could have sworn I could see this little boy sitting there on the sink kicking his feet. My mom was getting mad that we were looking into it because she thought it was going to scare Noah, so then my aunt, who we hadn't told about this, comes in and she starts freaking out. She's like, I have no idea what happened, but I left the apartment and I came back and all of the doors and windows were open. I locked the apartment." She finished off her creepy story by saying that there were a few more strange things that happened, and this all was enough for her to swear off ever staying in that place again. Miley believes the haunting ties back into the history of the building and says that the apparition she saw matches up with who once lived there. In our number 8 spot today we have Adele. The haunting story of Adele starts off when she decided that she had had enough of fans and paparazzi outside of her London home, so she decided to purchase and move to a new home in Sussex. This house, in its past life before housing the Grammy Award winner, is said to have been a convent. Despite the change, Adele continued to be visited by people she didn't want in her home, but this time the visitors were otherworldly. The singer claimed that she began to hear noises that she was unable to find the source of. Things in her home also began to fall for seemingly no apparent reason, and apparently these paranormal encounters made Adele so unsettled that she had to hire a bodyguard to stay in her house full time. Hopefully these plaguing hauntings have since stopped, but only Adele knows for sure. In our number 7 spot today we have Ozzy Osbourne. One of the most famous rock stars ever, Ozzy has long been connected to the occult. I mean, Ozzy, Prince of Darkness, didn't just come from nowhere. Aside from the rumors, however, Ozzy has been fairly open about his personal connection to the devil. In a 1984 issue of Hit Parader, Ozzy said, quote, "I really wish I knew why I've done some of the things I've done over the years. Sometimes I think that I'm possessed by some outside spirit. A few years ago, I was convinced of that. I thought I truly was possessed by the devil. I remember sitting through The Exorcist a dozen times, saying to myself, yeah, I can relate to that." He even has expressed confusion over whether or not if he's a medium for some kind of outside source or if something much more sinister is at play. When speaking of actually selling his soul, Ozzy had some less than comforting things to say. He said, quote, "I already have. Well, you sell your soul to the devil when you do something yourself that you shouldn't, and I already have. I've lived my life to the fullest. If there's an afterlife, I've got a good spot in the furnace. You know? In our number 6 spot today, we have Post Malone. Good old Posty has probably one of the most famous celebrity haunting stories, and it all started with a visit to ghost hunter Zach Bagans' museum. Within the museum was an old wine box that is said to hold a Dybbuk, which in Jewish mythology is a malicious demon. This box had come to the museum after the previous owner bought it on eBay and had some really horrible things happen to him and his family afterwards. These included reports of him having really horrific nightmares, and this extended to anyone else who touched the box, and sometimes even those who had just been around it. Even worse, his own mother had a serious medical emergency after he had given this box to her. This is all to say, the haunted item showed up in the Bagan Museum, and then 2018 rolled around and Post Malone decided to take a haunting tour of the occult collection. During this tour, Post Malone reached out and touched the box, and, well, he has been dealing with the consequences ever since. These are said to include the same horrific nightmares detailed by the box's previous owner. In our number 5 spot today, we have Bob Dylan. Not necessarily who I really expected to put on this list, but there was an interesting interview back in 2014 that made many people speculate that the musician might have actually sold his soul. In the interview, he was explaining that he owes his years of fame and success to a deal he made. The interviewer asked, "Why are you still out here?" To which Dylan replied, "It goes back to that destiny thing. I made a bargain with it. You know, long time ago, and I'm holding up my end." The interviewer, of course, had to follow up on that cryptic message, so he said, "What was your bargain?" And he replied, "To get where I am now." The interviewer asked, "Should I ask who you made the bargain with?" And he replied, "With the chief commander." The interviewer clarified, "On this earth?" To which he answered, "In this earth and in a world we can't see." I can totally see why some people decided to draw their own conclusions from this. I mean, it sounds like he's basically speaking in riddles, so while he doesn't outright say that he sold his soul, some believe that this is what he was trying to say in that interview. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mike Colter. You might know Mike Colter as he plays Luke Cage in the MCU, but what you might not know about the actor is a very ghostly encounter that he had. Back in 2019, Mike was on Kelly Clarkson's show, and while on the show, he had an eerie tale for the audience when he said, quote, "I'm from the South, and there's a lot of things that happened in the South that don't happen anywhere else." Of course, Kelly inquired further, and that is when the star revealed a reoccurring moment that he claims happened, quote, "night after night." His mother basically explained it to him as a spirit being attracted to his energy. He said, quote, "When I was a kid, I used to have this thing that was sitting on my chest when I would sleep, and it was keeping me from getting up, and I couldn't open my eyes, and I would struggle." I don't know about you guys, but that sounds absolutely horrifying. I know a couple demons that could match up with that. Maybe it's a sleep paralysis demon, who knows. In our number 3 spot today, we have Vanessa Hudgens. Just last year, in April of 2022, Vanessa appeared on the Kelly Clarkson show. I guess everyone's just on the Kelly Clarkson show talking about their paranormal experience. And during this appearance, she spoke about having, quote, "a lot of paranormal encounters over the years." She said, quote, "I kind of shut it down for a while because the unknown is scary, but I recently was like, no, this is a gift and something that I have the ability to do, so I'm going to lean into it." Expanding on how she is leaning into these abilities, she explained that she had actually recently completed her first real paranormal investigation. Now we have Ed, Lorraine, and Vanessa. During this investigation, she said she met a very playful ghost at the site of a cemetery. I mean, I guess it's not like a malicious spirit. She said that she was able to speak to this ghost using a spirit box, and that after introducing herself, the ghost replied and repeated the names back to her. Maybe this year we'll see Vanessa diving even further into the paranormal, the occult, and all of these otherworldly beings. In our number 2 spot today, we have Courtney Cox. Back in March 2022, former Friends star Courtney Cox shared a harrowing experience she had that led her to go as far as to sell her house. She said, quote, "I didn't believe at first, But I lived in this house in Laurel Canyon, which is in LA, obviously, and it was Gypsy Rose Lee's house and Carole King's. She went on to say, quote, "So Carole King came over to my house and she said that there had been a divorce that was really ugly and that there was a ghost in the house. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But other people would stay there with me, like friends of mine, and they said they felt an encounter with a woman who was sitting on the edge of the bed." Despite these tales from her friends and even doing an actual seance with Carole, Courtney still wasn't really a believer of the supernatural. This all did eventually change, however, and it happened when a UPS worker came to her house. Quote, "I was at the house one day, not being a believer. The doorbell rang. It was a UPS guy or something, and I opened the door and he said, 'Do you know this house is haunted?' And I go, 'Yeah, why? Why do you think that?' And he goes, 'Because there's someone standing behind you.' And I was like, let's sell. She said she quickly put the house up for sale. After that, and that she, quote, couldn't sleep there alone ever again. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Cynthia Rowley. So there was a show called Celebrity Ghost Stories, and in an episode, Cynthia Rowley showed up to share her haunting tale. The designer recalled a spooky tale that took place at her estate, which is located in Greenwich, Connecticut. She explained that there was a, quote, ghost-like feeling in the house, which certainly is an eerie feeling, but soon a feeling turned into something a little bit more tangible. Eventually, Cynthia began seeing a sort of apparition in the corner of a room in the home. This apparition appeared as a woman who was wearing a sort of scarf over her face. This is all chilling enough, but things only got worse when Cynthia had to escape a fire in her home. She did, thankfully, and was fine, but then the local fire chief told her something she hadn't previously known. The woman who once owned the home she now lived in was called the, quote, diamond match heiress who was badly burned in a blaze. Seems like Cynthia may have been haunted by the previous owner of the house, and not just in like a tacky decor kind of way, I mean like for real haunted.
Number 10. Clara Germana Seeley. Clara Germana Seeley was a South African Christian girl who in 1906 was said to be possessed by a demon. She is said to have been possessed when she was a schoolgirl at St. Michael's Mission. Clara was an orphan, and at the age of 16 she allegedly made a pact with Satan, and this is said to be the cause of her demonic possession. In an account written by a nun, Clara was said to be able to speak languages of which she had no previous knowledge. This fact was also witnessed by others who recorded that she understood Polish, German, French, Norwegian, and all other languages. The nun also reported that Clara demonstrated clairvoyance by revealing the most intimate secrets and transgressions of people with whom she had no contact. Also, Clara could not bear the presence of blessed objects and seemed powered with extraordinary strength and ferocity, often hurling nuns about the convent rooms and beating them up. According to some, Clara was said to have levitated 5 feet in the air, sometimes vertically and sometimes horizontally, and when sprinkled with holy water, she was reported to have come out of the state of her satanic possession. During the exorcism, Clara's first action was to knock the Holy Bible from the priest's hands and grab his stole in an attempt to choke him with it. At the end of the exorcism, it was said that the demon was forced out and she was healed. Number 9. Ronald Doe. In the late 1940s in the United States, priests of the Roman Catholic Church performed a series of exorcisms on an anonymous boy, documented under the name Ronald Doe. The boy was the alleged victim of demonic possession, and the events were recorded by the attending priest. It said after a family death, the family experienced strange noises, furniture moving on its own accord, and ordinary objects such as vases flying or levitating when the boy was nearby. The family then turned to their pastor for help. During the exorcism, the boy allegedly slipped one of his hands out of the restraints, broke a bed spring from under the mattress, and used it as an impromptu weapon, slashing the priest's arm and resulting in the exorcism ritual being halted. When they did another exorcism, it was stated during the scene that words such as evil and hell, along with other various marks, appeared on the teenager's body. Allegedly, during the litany of the saints portion of the exorcism ritual, the boy's mattress began to shake. Number 8. Barbie Haley. Barbie Haley was a young servant in Quebec in the 1660s who was possessed by a demon. Priests and nuns performed rituals to drive the demons away, with the bishop and governor argued about how to investigate their suspicions of witchcraft. A local miller named Daniel Voley, accused of using his knowledge of the dark arts to torment Barbie, was imprisoned and then executed. Barbie continued to experience the symptoms of demonic possession for months months even after the alleged witch was executed. The end of Barbie's ordeal came in the form as an exorcism, or what sounds very much like one, conducted by a layperson using a rib bone believed to belong to the deceased Jean de Berbeuf. And fun fact, this was Canada's first documented demon possession case. Number 7. Father Gabriel. In 1997, Father Gabriel Amorth conducted his exorcisms in Rome and was dealing with one troubled man. He asked for the help of Jesus, and the young man he was dealing with began to curse and spit and started using English instead of his native Italian. Screaming and howling, the demon burst forth and looked straight at him, drooling saliva from the young man's mouth. Father Gabriel said he returned fire with prayers and other ritual recitations, demanding that the demon reveal its name. He said, "Unclean spirit, whoever you are and all your companions who possess the servant of God, I command you, tell me your name, the day and the hour of your damnation." The man, fixed with a glare, snarled and said, "I am Lucifer." Father Gabriel was shocked. He did not expect to receive such a terrifying response. Now, the father mostly used prayer as his weapon, and as Father Gabriel continually commanded the demon to leave its host, it eventually left. Number 6. David Glatzel. In 1981, a young boy named David Glatzel had played host to a demon. After witnessing a number of increasingly ominous occurrences involving David, his family, exhausted and terrified, decided to enlist the aid of Ed and Lorraine Warren in a last-ditch effort to cure him. David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks had appeared on his neck afterward. David also started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. The Glatzel family, along with the Warrens, then proceeded to have a formal exorcism performed on David. They did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. During his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also have claimed to see the devil sitting in it. Number 5. Arnie Johnson. And that leads us to our next point of Arnie Johnson. During one of David's exorcisms, Arnie coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating. Afterwards, Arnie's personality completely changed. He would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, after he and his girlfriend Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine Warren informed the Brooklyn police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went on to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and the devil made me do it. The jury deliberated for 15 hours over 3 days before convicting Ernie of first-degree manslaughter. Though he was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, though he only served 5. Number 4. Michael Taylor. Michael Taylor became notable in England in 1974 as a result of the Ossett murder and his alleged demonic possession. Michael lived in Ossett, West Yorkshire, working as a butcher. In 1974, his wife, Christine, stated to a Christian fellowship group to which Michael belonged that his relationship with the lay leader of the group, Marie Robinson, was carnal in nature. Michael admitted that he felt an evil within him, and during the next meeting, Michael received an absolution, but nevertheless, his behavior continued to become more erratic. As a result, the local vicar called in other ministers experienced in the deliverance in preparation to cast out the demons residing within the man. The exorcism, which occurred on the 5th and 6th of October 1974 at St. Thomas's Church in Galber, was headed by Father Peter Vincent and was aided by Methodist clergyman the Reverend Raymond Smith. The exorcists believed that they had, in an all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons. At the end, exhausted, they allowed Michael to go home, although they felt at least 3 demons were still left with him. Number 3. Julia. Dr. Richard Gallagher had a girl named Julia come to his house and tell him that she was possessed. Julia exhibited a series of behaviors that constituted a once-in-a-century possession, from speaking in languages she claimed not to have known to allegedly levitating for over half an hour during an exorcism. "I know I'm possessed," Julia told Richard during a consultation. "I space out and then I don't recall what happens. They tell me a voice comes out of me. I don't know. I don't remember anything. It's a demon, I'm sure." Objects would fly off shelves miles around her. She somehow knew personal details about Richard's life, like how his mother had died of ovarian cancer, and the fact that the two cats in his house went absolutely berserk fighting each other the night before one of her sessions. Julia even found a way to reach him even when she wasn't with him, he says. He was talking on the phone with Julia's priest one night when both of the men heard one of the demonic voices that came from Julia during her trances, even though she was nowhere near a phone and thousands of miles away. Number 2. Anneliese Michael. Anneliese Michael was a German woman who underwent 67 Catholic exorcism rites during the year before her death. When she was younger, she experienced a seizure and was diagnosed with psychosis caused by temporal lobe epilepsy. Shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with depression and was treated by a psychiatric hospital. By the time she was 20, she had become intolerant to various religious objects and began to hear voices. After the taking of psychiatric medications for 5 years failed to improve her symptoms, Anneliese and her family became convinced that she was possessed by a demon. As a result, her family appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. While rejected at first, 2 priests got permission from the local bishop in 1975. The priests began conducting exorcism sessions and the parents stopped consulting doctors. She became increasingly scary, speaking about dying to atone for the wayward youth of the day and to the apostate priests of the modern church. A total of 67 exorcism sessions, 1 or 2 each week, lasting up to 4 hours each, were performed over approximately 10 months in 1975 and 1976. And coming in at number 1 is Anna Uckland. Anna Uckland's demonic possession and exorcism occurred over several decades, culminating in an extensive exorcism that lasted from August 18th to December 23rd, 1928 in Erling, Iowa. Anna was said to have exhibited symptoms similar to possession beginning as a young girl and was 46 years old during her final exorcism by Father Theophilus Riesinger, a Roman Catholic priest. She would levitate, howl, and hang from the frame of a doorway. The extensive exorcism resulted in deterioration of her body as she refused to consume food, also vomiting foul debris and what appeared to be tobacco leaves. Her head, lips, and face reportedly swelled, and she was also able to speak in multiple languages unknown to her. Anna was believed to be possessed by Judas Iscariot as well as Jacob, her own father, who had cursed her with the help of his lover, and her aunt Mina. On December 23rd, the final day of the exorcism, Father Riesinger commanded the demons in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary to depart to hell. Anna collapsed on her bed and began to shriek, Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina, followed by hell, hell, hell. She opened her eyes and then spoke in her own voice saying, My Jesus, mercy, praise be Jesus Christ. The exorcism was successful, and Anna's case is considered by theology and paranormal scholars to be one of the most abundantly documented cases of possession in the 20th century, including a profile in the 1936 issue of Time magazine. Coming in at number 10, we have Annabelle. Bought in an antique shop in 1970, a woman gave a raggedy doll to her daughter, Donna, who was in nursing school. Now let me just say, I had my own Raggedy Ann doll growing up, and it always gave me the chills. Now, Donna and her roommate Angie kept coming home to find the doll in different positions and different locations. Then the doll began leaving them notes reading, help. A psychic told them that the doll was possessed by the spirit of a girl named Annabelle who had died at the location where their apartment complex had been built. But the girl's friend Lou thought there was something more sinister about Annabelle, and she levitated up his body and strangled him until he passed out. The girls then called Ed and Lorraine Warren, who decided the doll was actually a conduit to hell that a demon was using. 2 exorcisms didn't work, and the Warrens took Annabelle home. Now, upon arriving home, Ed and Lorraine placed the doll in Ed's study, and the doll levitated and moved about the house. Even when placed in the locked office in an outer building, the Warrens claimed that she would turn up later inside the house. Finally, the Warrens decided to lock Annabelle up for good, and they had a specially made glass and wood case constructed, upon which they inscribed the Lord's Prayer and St. Michael's Prayer. Then for the rest of his life, Ed would periodically say a binding prayer over the case, ensuring that the sinister spirit and doll remained good and trapped. Number 9. The Devil Made Me Do It. Ed and Lorraine Warren helped exorcise a possessed boy named David Glatzel in the early 80s. David's family had seen him being beaten and choked by invisible hands, and that red marks appeared on his neck afterward. David had started to growl, hiss, speak in otherworldly voices, and recite passages from the Bible as well. Now, they did many exorcisms on David, and Lorraine said that David levitated, ceased breathing for a time, and even demonstrated the supernatural ability of precognition. Now, during his exorcisms, there was also a rocking chair in the room that would allegedly rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. Then David's older sister's boyfriend, Arnie, then coerced one of the demons to possess him while participating in David's exorcisms. Afterwards, Arnie's personality changed, and he would fall into a trance-like state where he would growl and hallucinate, but later have no memory of it. Then one day, after his and his girlfriend Debbie's landlord was drunk and misbehaving, Ernie ended his life. The day after the incident, Lorraine informed the Brookfield police that Ernie was possessed when the crime was committed. The case then went to trial, where Ernie's defense was demonic possession and that the devil made me do it. Number 8. The Enfield Poltergeist. The Enfield Poltergeist was a claim of supernatural activity in Enfield, London between 1977 and 1979. The poltergeist activity centered around two young sisters, Janet and Margaret Hodgson. In August 1977, single-parent Peggy Hodgson called the Metropolitan Police to her rented home, claiming she had witnessed furniture moving and that 2 of her 4 children heard knocking sounds in the walls. Later claims included disembodied voices, loud noises, thrown toys, overturned chairs, and children levitating. Over a period of 18 months, more than 30 people, including the Hodgson's neighbors, paranormal investigators, and journalists, say they variously saw heavy furniture moving on its own accord, objects being thrown across the room, and the sisters seeming to levitate several feet off the ground. Many have also recorded knocking noises and a gruff voice. Now, Ed and Lorraine Warren went to investigate in 1978 and were convinced that the events had a supernatural explanation. It was during this time that the house of the supposed poltergeist started speaking through Janet. The young girl would often go in a trance-like state where she would speak in a deep, scratchy voice, claiming to be the ghost of a man named Bill Wilkins who had died in the house years before. Now, one of the interactions of Janet levitating was actually caught on camera. Number 7. The Snedeker House. It's important to note that the Snedeker House used to be a former funeral home, so of course it was haunted. The Warrens arrived at the house in 1986 to conduct their investigation. While there, the couple proclaimed that the house was infested with demons. The story begins with Carmen and Alan Snedeker, their 3 sons, their daughter, and 2 nieces moving into a home in Southington, Connecticut. Strange happenings of the house started off fairly innocent, with the mother noticing items around the house going missing. Then the children started talking about seeing strange people in their home, more specifically a man with long black hair. Then the eldest son had a drastic personality change that included violent outbursts. He attacked family members out of nowhere and didn't seem like himself. Now, doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia, but the family was not convinced. They believed that his strange and terrifying behavior was the result of the environment and the ghost in the home. Ed and Lorraine spent weeks in the home to get the full demonic experience, and after their investigation, they declared that the morticians that had worked in the home when it was a funeral parlor practiced necromancy and had infused the home with a deep evil. The Warrens performed an exorcism on the home to rid of the evil and make it safe for the family to return. Number 6. The Demonic Werewolf. This account is based on a story of Bill Ramsey, a real werewolf in London. Bill first demonstrated demonically possessed behavior at the age of 9. Apparently, he displayed superhuman strength, even managing to rip out a post from its concrete dwellings. He would also try to bite at his family and relatives before having seizures. In 1983, now a grown man, he admitted himself to an institution after the cravings for blood returned, but when in the hospital, he attacked a nurse and barked like a dog. In 1987, while displaying a wolfish demeanor, he attacked a police officer with superhuman force. It took 6 more officers altogether to restrain the beast. Now, the fiasco led to a mass news coverage, and the Warrens were on point to wrestle the raging mongrel from his wicked soul. After being flown to Connecticut, the wolf demon was exorcised successfully, and Bill has had no issues ever since. Number 5. The Smurl Haunting. The Smurl Haunting is named after Jack and Janet Smurl. They claim that a demon was haunting their home and in West Pittenson, Pennsylvania, between the years of 1974 and 1989. The demon was alleged to have thrown the family dog into a wall and pushed their daughter down the stairs. The Warrens arrived at the Smurl household in 1986 to conduct their own investigation. Ed described the demonic presence as very powerful and claimed that the entity was able to shake mirrors and move furniture. He claimed to have recorded audio footage of the knocking and rapping sounds caused by the demon as well. Number 4. The Borley Church. The Borley Church is a haunted place of worship that was built in the 12th century and is located in Essex. Crafted during the Norman conquest of 1066, Borley's church is just steps away from fellow paranormal hotspot Borley Rectory and has been the subject of numerous reports, including eerie footsteps, unsettling smells, and spine-tingling apparitions, most notably a solemn nun aimlessly wandering the courtyard. Now, others reported apparitions included a veiled young lady who walks the churchyard grounds before suddenly disappearing, as well as a monk hiding within the church. The organ is said to play by itself, and paranormal investigators claim to have heard ominous, mournful cries and groans coming from the building. Ed himself declared that he had caught an image of the spirit of the monk looking around a book in the church on camera. Number 3. Amityville. One of the most famous haunted houses in the United States is the Dutch Colonial House at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York. The haunting stems from the night of November 13, 1974, when 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo ended the lives of all 6 members of his family. He was arrested, convicted, and given 6 concurrent life sentences. Then in December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children, moved into the house and exclaimed that spooky things were happening. For example, George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which was the approximate time that Ronald committed his crimes. Kathy said that she would feel a ghostly presence and be embraced by it, and all of this and more caused the family to flee in fear after only staying in the house for 28 days. Due to this, Ed and Lorraine visited the house and set up time-lapse infrared cameras and caught a photo of a ghost boy. Now, the picture wasn't made public until 3 years later when George Lutz appeared on the Merv Griffith Show in 1979. Now, believers of the haunting think this is the photo of the ghost of the youngest DeFeo son, John Matthew, who was 9 at the time of the deaths. The Warrens have suggested that the house is occupied by a malevolent spirit due to its history and tried their best to cast them out. Number 2. Cindy McBain. One day, on one of the 15-year-old's many trips to the mall, Cindy McBain found a new shop called the Antique Attic. Wandering around, she was excited to find a battered old Ouija board for sale, which she bought for $5. After getting the board home, Cindy tried it out with her friend Nancy, and during the first session, the girls heard clawing coming from within Cindy's bedroom walls, which they described as sounding like something trying to be set free. The incident resulted in Nancy running from the house, but Cindy continued to experiment with the Ouija board. Soon after, her friends started to notice a big change in Cindy as she had lost her normally big appetite and she had become gaunt and dull-eyed. Even her teachers became concerned, as did her parents, who on several occasions heard strange voices coming from Cindy's bedroom. When her mother discovered the Ouija board and tried to take it, Cindy became aggressive and grasped her arm with a strong hand, and she later reported feeling afraid of her own daughter. As things escalated, the clawing sound was heard throughout the whole house. Cindy quit school and became a virtual stranger to her family. She eventually became violent, at one point attacking her father and slamming his head into a wall. After this, Cindy was hospitalized and the Warrens were called in. The climax of the case took place at Cindy's hospital bed, and after coming to the conclusion that Cindy was a victim of demonic infestation, the Warrens called in Father Elmy, who noted that Cindy reacted violently to a crucifix. Then, over the next 18 hours, the priest conducted an exorcism. And coming in at number 1 is the Conjuring House. Originally called the Arnold Estate, this house came filled with horrors. In January 1971, the Perrin family, Roger, Carolyn, and their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, moved into a farmhouse. Not long after moving in, the family reportedly experienced all manners of paranormal activity, from apparitions to physical attacks by unseen hands. Now, the most frequent apparition was one of a woman with a broken neck who came to be popularized as Bathsheba Sherman. Now, it turns out that there actually was a real person named Bathsheba Sherman who lived on the Perrins' property in the mid-1800s. She was rumored to be a Satanist, and there was evidence that she had been involved in the death of a neighborhood child, though no trial ever took place. Now, the Perrins believed that it was Bathsheba's spirit that was tormenting them. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine inserted themselves into the family's alleged experiences, making the case famous via their lectures and eventually the Conjuring film. Now, the Perron family claimed that paranormal experiences went on for almost 10 years until the family had abandoned the house in 1980.
Coming in at number 10, we have Julia. Julia is my sister's name. Also, on the day of scripting this video, it is her birthday, so happy birthday, Julia. The best human alive, bar none. This story is not about my sister though, and while I'm sure I've made the odd demonically possessed joke about her in our youth, she most definitely is free of the devil. The Julia in this story, however, is filled with him. Apparently. A Yale graduate and self-expressed man of science, Dr. Richard Gallagher, experienced a possession so dastardly that it had him question his beliefs. The Ivy League educated, board-certified psychiatrist who teaches at Columbia University and the New York Medical College came across a woman named, you guessed it, Julia. Well, that's what we're calling her, anyway. She was a strange woman with flowing black clothes and gothic makeup. She proclaimed herself queen of a satanic cult, but she had approached a priest because she was worried that she was possessed. Gallagher said that objects would fly off shelves around her and she knew odd details about Gallagher's life. The professor said that Julia started appearing to him even when she wasn't there. Creepy. Coming into number 9, bear with me on the pronunciation here, we have the Wan Uimata Makutu lifting. It was a mouthful. In 2009, a teenage girl died and another had her eyes gouged out during a Maori exorcism performed by her relatives who believed that they were cursed. The teens had stolen a lion statue from outside a pub and therefore were subjected to a several-day-long exorcism despite returning it. The surviving teenager recounted the experience, saying that her family stood around her in a circle in water and her grandparents actually came home and told her to go with peace and love. She arrived at hospital with her eyes oozing blood and claimed that she'd been forced to drink urine and repeatedly was kicked by her family. The lengthy trial of the girl's family members lasted 29 days. It made headlines and caused a lot of controversy as many Maori people supported the practice of Makutu. One uncle and 4 aunts were found guilty of the drowning and abuse. Honestly, so intense. So is demonic possession real or can it easily be faked? Consider this at number 8. That's right, we are talking about Martha Brosier. Martha Brosier lived in the mid-1500s and was accused of fraud after it was suspected that she had actually faked demonic possessions, which at the time did bring her considerable fame. She said she suffered a shortness of breath, she could not stick out her tongue, and she would regularly gnash her teeth together. She'd spasm and complain of voices in her head. How was her fraud discovered? It seems that she was tricked into drinking holy water under the guise of normal water, which reportedly had no effect. Right, so that solves that then. How she was able to speak with her mouth shut in fluent and intelligible French, English and Greek is an utter mystery. Coming into number 7, we have the real exorcism of Emily Rose. So you may have seen the 2005 movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. It's actually on Netflix and it's quite the horror show. The real Emily Rose is a teenager called Anna Elizabeth Mitchell who lived in a very religious kind of upbringing in Bavaria in West Germany. She attended mass twice a week and was raised in a very Catholic environment. Anna Elise, as she was known, suffered from epilepsy and possible schizophrenia. She began hearing voices and she thought that she was going to rot in hell. She claimed that she would have horrifying visions while she was praying. This obviously concerned her religious family and they were convinced that she was possessed. As a result, her condition then worsened. A local priest also came forward and convinced that actually she was a demon. He said there was a demon in her, so he called for an exorcism in 1975. Bishop Strangle, with the permission of Anna Elise's parents, conducted 67 exorcisms on the young woman. Now, Emily did die aged 23 after suffering a year of demonic exorcisms during which she was starved. She contracted pneumonia and she had broken knees from having to kneel so often. It was ruled by courts that her death was preventable, so was she mentally ill or was she possessed? Coming into number 6, we have The Devil Made Me Do It. This is one Ed and Lorraine Warren case that even the pair of spooky investigators who by and large had seen it all were absolutely scared of. The story starts off with an 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel. Along with Catholic priests, the pair were called in to try and rid the boy of demons. Over several days of grueling spiritual work, the group believed that they had exorcised the unwanted spirit. But there was a dramatic twist. The Warrens claimed that the demon actually fled into his brother, 18-year-old Arnes, although they didn't realize at the time. Just months later, Arnie wasn't feeling himself at all, and then one night he killed his landlord in an argument. His defense lawyer argued that he was possessed, and the Warrens were even called in to testify in court. The pair claimed that actually they did believe him to be possessed by none other than the devil. After their testimony, Arnie served just 5 years in jail and was released in his mid-20s. We don't actually know where he is now or what he's up to. I don't even know if the devil was ever exorcised from him. Coming into number 5, we have Mademoiselle Elizabeth de Ranfeng. Mademoiselle Ranfeng became a widow in 1617, after which she was heavily courted by her physician, her doctor. It seems that he would buy her gifts, and after she rejected him, he prescribed her a liquid which was later thought to have been a love potion. She started behaving strangely, but the man continued to treat her with potions. It is thought that he infected her with the devil. The ailments that she suffered led people to believe that she was possessed, and she was exorcised in 1619. During her exorcism, it was said that a demon presented itself and spoke in French, Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, and Italian. The demon was reportedly able to know and recite the thoughts and sins of the various individuals who examined her. The demon was super persistent, but eventually Mademoiselle Ranfeng was cured, thankfully. The physician who had slipped her the potions, unfortunately though for him, was burned alive for practicing magic. Cripes, the 17th century was a very intense time, the stakes were very high. Coming into number 4, one of my favourite historical figures I had no idea they'd been exorcised, we have Salvador Dali. I love me a bit of Salvador Dali, especially in the extreme moustache years. The 20th century surrealist artist created some thought-provoking and subversive work, such as The Persistence of Memory and The Lobster Telephone. Hello. The Spanish visionary regularly offended the Catholic Church, and however in his later life the artist did write in defense of the religion, which is, I guess, kind of confusing. Friar Gabriel Maria Berardi claimed to have performed an exorcism on Dali in France in 1947. Allegedly, the artist created a sculpture of Christ and gave it to the friar as a thank you. The man certainly was quirky, but expressly so in the 1930s and early 40s. Perhaps the genius behind his work all along was the devil, but honestly, if I was going to put my money on it, I'd say it was likely the absinthe. Coming into number 3, we have the Tănăacu exorcism. Some nasty things went down in Romania. In June 2005, a nun was crucified in the mountain village of Tănăacu, which, to be honest, what on earth, that's some straight up horror movie stuff, right? Is this the basis for the nun? Sister Irina Konnici grew up in an orphanage, and following her death, her brother did testify that actually he'd witnessed Satan go into her. It seems that Sister Irina may have been mentally ill, and it was said that she would giggle during mass. It seems that she got into an argument with a 29-year-old priest, Father Chronageu. As a result, he claimed that she was possessed by Satan. Now, she was bound and gagged and exorcised. However, the father claimed that she was beyond salvation. He had her crucified. An article in the Daily Telegraph from 2005 claims that she was found gagged and chained to a cross. After her death, the priest claimed that God had performed a miracle. At her funeral, claps of thunder rang out as the coffin was lowered into the ground, which the priest said was a sign that the will of God had been done. What a nutter, he literally murdered her. Those who were involved in the nun's murder were sentenced to time in jail, but nobody served more than 7 years. If someone crucified me, honestly, I really hope they'd spend the rest of their life in prison. We have a very shocking case at number 2. We have Mother Teresa. Did you know that she was exorcised? Mother Teresa is considered to have been one of the holiest women to have ever lived. The woman received a Nobel Peace Prize, although I will say that other reports say that she was cruel and friends with top leaders of Masonic cults, so I don't know. Mother Teresa fell ill in 1996, breaking her collarbone. Now, months later, she contracted malaria and suffered heart failure. It seems that the Archbishop of Calcutta ordered a priest to perform an exorcism because he thought that actually she was under attack by the devil. He said that she was very agitated and removed wires from her body in hospital. She died just a short while later. This is the exorcism case that inspired the movie The Exorcist. Coming into number 1, we have Roland Doe. In the late 1940s, a number of priests performed an exorcism on a boy in the United States. The boy was kept anonymous as he was just 14 years old, with reports being made by the church that actually, there was a devil in there. They gave him the pseudonym of Ronald Doe. It seems that his aunt introduced him to an Ouija board before she died, after which the family experienced a haunting. Events got even worse as objects started flying or levitating when the boy was near. Priests were called in to exorcise him, and during the first procedure, the boy broke free of restraints. He broke a bed spring and then used it to slash a priest. The boy was taken to the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri, where he was placed in a psychiatric wing before his next exorcism. Doctors and nurses said that the words hell and evil appeared in marks on his body. Finally, the demon was exorcised and the hospital was later razed.